Today's episode of Entertainment Drive-Thru is brought to you by Audible.com. Audible.com has over 180,000 audiobooks and audio products. Get your free audiobook of your choice at audibletrial.com/edrivethru.
Welcome to Entertainment Drive-Thru. Today's special is Roddy Chong, musician, actor, and speaker.
Quiet on the set.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage.
Hello, welcome to Entertainment Drive-Thru. I'm Anna, with me is my co-host Dan, and today we have a very special guest. He's a virtuoso violinist and amazing keynote speaker. He's been on tour with bands like Trans-Siberian Orchestra, Kevin Costner, and Modern West, and he's toured with Shania Twain and Celine Dion and so much more. I can't wait to hear from him. Let's welcome, joining us is the one, the only, Roddy Chong!
Yeah,
Woo!
welcome to the show.
All right, Dan and Anna.
And we've
Great
been
to talk with you guys.
to interview him for like a year now, I'm so excited.
I was going to say, we should have changed that to welcome to the show after about 5 ages of trying to get you on the show.
That's right.
He's so amazing. We've been trying to get a hold of him forever. So welcome.
Yes, finally. And how are you?
I'm doing great. I feel like this is just a continuation of our meal from Mel's Diner.
Right? Exactly.
Right. Well, tell us a bit about yourself. Now, you have done a lot of really exciting things, but how did you get started as a musician?
That definitely goes back to my family. My parents got me involved playing violin from age 2.
Oh, wow.
Now, I thought that was crazy because how could a 2-year-old, be playing violin? But I have a niece and nephew. They both started playing violin, and I was able to see my niece start at age 2.
Wow.
And basically what they're doing, they are taught by the same teacher who taught me. It's very interesting. She never ages.
Oh my God! Wow.
She's like Laura Hall from Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Yes,
just looks the exact same 20 years later.
Yes. Well, this teacher, her name is Betty Haig, and she's in Arlington Heights, Illinois. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, and I was watching my niece go through this 2-year-old sort of torture. But basically, it's group play with kids. So they're first just holding their bow and touching the bow to their nose and to their belly button and to their knees, or just things like that. And so the kid will look at the kid next to them and go, well, if Bobby's doing it, then I'll do it. Or to the left, if Susie's doing it, then I'm doing it. And so they don't even know that this is actually not normal to be playing violin, or at least working with this instrument at such a young age. But I'm glad it happened. But a lot of people think that I was this kid that loved to play, and it really was not the case. It was just a discipline thing from my mom. It's like you take out the garbage, you do your homework, you brush your teeth, and you practice violin 20 minutes every day.
Thanks for saying that, because I love that too. When my piano teacher said the same thing, she's like, I hated my mom because she always made me play piano all the time, but now I'm so grateful because she's a piano teacher and plays piano professionally.
Well, and it's funny because you brought up the piano. I actually, when I was really, really young, I don't remember what age I started. I was probably 6 or 7 when my parents started me and my brother off on piano. And I remember just hating it, absolutely hating it when I got started. And it's funny because I absolutely love playing guitar today. Hated that when I started it too. But at the same time though, when I started piano, I absolutely couldn't stand it, but I knew I wanted so badly to be better than my brother at the instrument. So I practiced every day I could.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a gift that our parents gave us, teaching us how to practice, or even just this avenue to go down that's practicing a certain instrument.
Right.
And I'm sure you've heard also that, parents or adults later come back and they say the same thing over and over. I wish my parents didn't let me quit. It's very, very common. And right at that age 10 or 11-year-old time, every kid wants to quit. So any parents listening, just parents are the ones that impose their will on the kids, so they should not let the kids quit, and that's going to serve them for the rest of their lives.
And you heard that from Roddy Chong. So.
Right. Well, and that actually is a really good point. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of those things about learning an instrument. And this is why I actually I've had people ask me throughout the years if I give guitar lessons and if I can give them guitar lessons. And the first thing I say to all of them is, do this first. Go on the internet. Especially if they're learning today, because I don't know why I say today, like we could go back in time with a time machine, but the fact that they're learning today and there's so many resources out there, I always give them a list of websites, and I say, go to these websites first. Start teaching yourself, because you're going to be in that position where it's going to be so frustrating to learn, because it's really tough to get started on an instrument. And it's going to be like that age that you're talking about, where it's just, you get frustrated, you don't really want to continue. And if you can get past that period, then you're going to actually be good at this instrument. You're actually going to want to continue.
Yeah, I believe that everything is connected to everything else. So that's really an awesome analogy to life. That's with anything, that you get to that point where it's really uncomfortable. There's a big part of you that wants to stop. There's a small voice saying, if I keep going, there could be a reward after. It could get better. Yeah. And if you just kind of keep on almost like crawling uphill through this situation, yes, it gets way better on the other side, but no one's ever going to do that for me. And no one's going to do that for anyone else. And that's living life. So, I mean, when we're able to do that, that definitely happened in my life too, practicing through my instrument. It did open up those doors and those avenues with the other areas of my life, in how to get through those times. And then you're to that place of that you couldn't even imagine that you're actually at that place, right? Whether that's with your instrument or with anything else.
Yeah,
so true.
Absolutely. And now I actually wanted to ask you, because we got talking about how you got started and how you got into playing the instrument. But the question I want to ask is, when is that moment that you decided that being a musician is what you were meant to do? It wasn't going to be being Celine Dion's personal assistant. You wanted to be a musician.
Yeah. Music was a big part of my family, and a big part of my life. I grew up when MTV was playing music videos, so I did watch a lot of that. I was influenced by that, and that is what I gravitated towards. I did not necessarily grow up in a family or in kind of a community which was in the suburbs of Chicago. It's called the Midwest of the USA. Being a musician or even an artist is not really a typical path. So I was taking my cues from my social group, and I was kind of like, I just don't know what I want to do remotely, because I knew that I was a different person with a proclivity towards the arts, but I wasn't sure if that was legit. So I went to college to get a kind of a regular degree and hopefully get some kind of a normal job with some kind of a normal major. Right. But especially in college, I definitely took care of my academics as best as I could. Right. Yeah. But my hobbies and the things on the side were in the performing arts, but that wasn't just musicianship. That was dance, acting, things behind the scenes in production. But usually it was around a stage and there was performing going on. Nice. And so because of, I'm glad I went to college because of that, which usually people look at those things as distractions or side hobbies. That actually became the main event for me, and where I would lose time, like be in that zone and just kind of be involved with something, and then I would wake up and like 8 hours went by rehearsing or something. That was involved with the stage or musicals and singing, dancing, performing, that kind of a thing. Or when I would just kind of be journaling and writing out ideas, and this great story would come out of that would involve like different colors and different animals and inspiration and things that not only I thought were cool, people were like, I love that story.
Nice.
That would come out of the performing arts. So I knew that the performing arts was a direction that I wanted to go. I just didn't know it was legit. So I just moved back to Chicago from Indiana University and just started performing in a lot of different ways. I thought it was going to be very short term, and then I would have to do something normal, which for me probably would have been sales. Because, because I was good at friends, making friends and having friends and good with people. And I had started a couple little businesses when I was in college. And so I knew that I could sell or I thought that I could be decent at that. So I thought that was going to be a default. My sister became a doctor. Actually, a lot of people in my family are doctors, but that was not going to be for me. But, a lot of people don't know this, but I actually started off my performing arts career as a dancer.
Really?
Yeah.
Hey, high five.
Hey, what?
I'm also I wanted to be a dancer when I was 16. So I feel you.
Well, Michael Jackson and just certain things that you saw, you're just like, it's just in your brain and it's so inspiring. And so I was not a trained dancer necessarily, but I would copy things that I saw on TV. And then I found folks that did choreography and I tried. I did a lot of auditions in the Chicagoland area. And I definitely had the ability to go for it, which is a trait that is necessary in the performing arts. But I did not have the talent and the skill in dance. They would do these auditions and then they would cut people out. In the beginning, like half the people just gone. And I was always in that first group. And there came a time where I just had to look at that and go, these people have been dancing with all the fundamentals in all areas of dance since they were, toddlers. And so I did dance with one band. It was called Church of Rhythm. I wasn't paid. They took care of my expenses. But this band, Church of Rhythm, was out of Chicago. It was kind of like a hip hop band. And I was one of the backup dancers and choreographers.
Nice.
And what they did with their music is they went, I'm making the quote signs in the air right now. They went unplugged. And one of the guys knew that I had played violin. And he said, pull that thing out. And I really hadn't played it much in college because I had let it go when I was a senior in high school but I did pull it out. And normally I needed sheet music to play. And I did kind of write out some parts. It was like this safety chain that I had that I couldn't let go of, this music. And we performed some things and there was a big response, like way bigger than I thought.
Wow.
And people said, really liked what you did on the violin. And in my mind, I'm like, I was only playing like whole notes and half notes. But I did recognize it was relatively in tune and I enjoyed the response and it made me take a look again at the violin.
Yeah.
Nice. I love that. And that's what led you to pursue the violin again, or just that
That's
incident,
right.
or?
Yes, that incident helped me go, oh my goodness, there might be something here.
Yeah.
And so I grew up at an interesting church. It was called Willow Creek Community Church. And a lot of times people grow up at church, it's really boring and the music's horrible and it's very boring. But the church I grew up at was not boring. It was the opposite of. Actually, the arts there were actually pretty good.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And so they would do a lot of different rock songs. And one of the bands that was getting traction was a band called Jars of Clay. So I learned a bunch of Jars of Clay songs on the violin and performed them at church. And there was this one song that got a lot of mainstream play. It was called Flood. And so I learned all the violin parts there. And I had this friend named Becca. And Becca was, along with my dancing, I was really into group fitness, like teaching aerobics and personal training and all this stuff. And she was actually pretty high up in that industry, especially on the music side. And she had moved from Louisville, Kentucky down to Nashville, Tennessee. And I just called her up and we were friends, and I asked her how Nashville was going, and she said, it's going great, except there's this guy and he's chasing me around. He keeps asking me out, and he has some claim to fame that he produced some Jars of Clay CD or something like that. And I don't really want to go out with him. And I was like, Becca, you got to go out with him. And I'm like, man, I've been like daydreaming about touring with those guys. And so she actually went on a date with this guy, and during the date talked about me. And after the date, the guy called me up and said, hey, put your stuff on video and send it into management. And he kind of made that bridge. And management was actually looking for a violinist. So the timing was really interesting.
Wait a minute. So did you essentially like pimp her out so that you could get a job with this guy?
That's essentially what happened.
Did you at least buy her flowers or something afterward as a thank you?
Oh my gosh. Flowers, meals.
Yes, okay. So she's good for life because she made you this opportunity.
Absolutely. No, Becca's awesome. We're still friends. And yes, this one thing, I mean, there's a lot of little things like that, but that, the G-rated of pimping her out, it was very G-rated, but no, man, she did that. And if that hadn't happened, I don't think I would have had a career because the timing was really interesting too. I mean, just like something like 2 weeks after he called me, Jars of Clay did a concert in Chicago at this famous place called the Double Door. And then they took me out to coffee, and they had seen me playing on the video, and they asked if I would tour with them. So that was the first real tour with like a bus and per diem, so I wouldn't starve, and I got paid a little bit, and then I got to really see what the music business was about. And something really interesting is that Matchbox 20 opened for us.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's one of those bands I've been wondering lately. What happened to them? Like, what happened to Rob Thomas? It's like both of them just kind of like disappeared.
Are you sure they're not out there?
Are they still going? Does anyone know?
They're definitely still going.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
good.
Definitely.
Because I loved that band, and it just seemed like out of nowhere, no one talked about them. No one heard from them.
Well, that's because they were so dominant in the late 90s, and here we are, the year's 2015. So, things have changed, but yes, they were so dominant for, 10 years. And then Rob Thomas had his solo career. And I won't even say it in the past tense. He still has a solo career, and that guy's a great writer. So he's going to be around for, for many singles and hits to come.
Nice.
And I think what it is that now that the internet is allowing us to piecemeal things and pick and choose a little bit more instead of just kind of where it comes at us, we just need to go type in Rob Thomas or type in Matchbox 20 and see what's going on with those guys. And I don't know if it's necessarily arenas. I mean, maybe it is, but those guys have a huge following, and as their college audience grew into their 20s and 30s, now they have this discretionary income to pay a little bit more to go see those shows. So those guys are doing great. And I'm still friends with Rob Thomas. So
all right, well, we're going to take a quick break to listen to a clip from Mozart's Figaro, performed live by the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. But we'll be right back. stop talking because you were saying a whole ton of awesome stuff. But you mentioned that, that your family went into like, being doctors and stuff like that. And, it's very interesting because my dad is a doctor and my mom was a nurse. And I went into music. My brother went into music. And my sister is going into education. And she's also a very talented singer and piano player. And I think it's so interesting that it seems to be pretty common with families where, like when the parents are doctors, the kids either go into medicine or they go into music. And I was thinking about it while I was listening to you. I think one of the things for me is I wanted to do something intelligent because, with my parents both being very, very intelligent people and showing me, old classic films from, a young age. So I was, really watching, more intelligent stuff. And I was thinking about it. I think, going into music, I really wanted to do something that, was thought-provoking, pushed beyond just, the average song. And I think that it's kind of an interesting connection between the two of those.
Yeah, Dan, I'm glad you brought that up. I've never had anyone bring anything up like that to me. My mom was a doctor in optometry. My dad, with an MBA, ended up being a certified accountant and then owning a lamp company. Wow. Mm-hmm. Yes, a lot of my cousins are doctors. A lot of my aunts and uncles are doctors. And what they did, I mean, obviously there's differences, but there's some similarities with our parents is that they were so active in their love and care for their kids that, of course, it involved schooling and book knowledge, but it also involved different areas of nurturing the brain, which is going to involve the arts, because a lot of people that don't know that, they don't necessarily look at the arts or music in particular as important as maybe sports. Sports is going to be the one that helps them be social and push around the world, which it is important. But there's this component about music and the arts that literally can change the world, where when things are invented or when something is pushed forward, that is a creative art. Yeah. And so, like I said in college, I mean, if I just let the academics, fall apart, that would have been really bad in my family. I mean, that's not an option. But as far as also being involved with music and practicing and collaborating in areas that are sometimes even mysterious, things that are unknown in music. And like you said, trying to make that best song or going places perhaps musically that we've never gone. Oh, yeah, that takes some, like you said, intelligence, some skill, and it's difficult. And I'm really glad that my parents were that actively involved now that I look back on that, on how I grew up.
Well, and I was going to say, that's another thing about it that, and this is absolutely 100% because of my dad, because my dad and I used to, every once in a while we would talk about like, the machines that would be used in medicine and, like the EKG machines and stuff like that. And, like the MRIs and things like that. And it's interesting that now today I'm so fascinated by the science behind music and, like all this technology that's coming out from music. And, I always end up, every once in a while I have these discussions with my dad where I'm just like, I just found this really cool, like technology that's being used, by doctors to study, the brain waves of a musician. And it's something that I think is interesting. And it has to be because I grew up in a medical family. But, I think it's also something that I think is good for musicians is to have that mindset of, like pushing beyond it and trying to think, like looking outside of music to learn new stuff because it helps with your creativity for writing music. If any of that like made any sense.
No, it really made sense to me, and maybe it only makes sense to us. No, but no, it definitely made sense to me. I mean, like I said earlier, I think everything is connected to everything else. And I also, like you, study other things. People that are winning like the Nobel Peace Prize right now, it's all about neurology and the brain.
Yeah.
And that brain, a lot of artists use that. Like for us to do something that's daring and not necessarily obscenely shocking or anything like that, but just things that are daring, things that have not been discovered yet. Again, that's a very artistic way of going about things. And for instance, the way that the brain used to be viewed was that things are hardwired, that this part of the brain does this and that part of the brain does that. But there are studies that show that sometimes there's overlap, or there's someone that had a stroke and like a whole side of the brain is not functioning, and other parts of the brain start taking on those functions. I mean, one of my favorite books on that subject is The Brain That Changes Itself by Norman Doidge.
Yeah.
And I think anyone would enjoy reading that, just knowing that the brain is not hardwired, but that it's plastic, that it is malleable, and that it can change. And I think a lot of people just kind of go, okay, I was super smart studying in college, in my 20s, and then it's all downhill from there. But there's definitely ways of continuing to work on your brain and different parts of your brain, just like working out.
Right.
And you can have this amazing brain that is continually growing all the way into your 90s.
Right.
And that's because the brain is plastic and keeps changing. But unless you're willing to think differently or even, test the data of that, you don't even know that is even a possibility. And then you go with the social narrative that everything is just downhill from age 23 on, and you're just becoming, amnesia is setting in at 27 and things like that, when really we aren't a victim of that.
Right.
If we continue to work at it, just like working at your craft, working on things to keep your brain activated, taking care of your brain, this thing can keep on growing. And that's just a different way of thinking, but it's not just an opinion, it's scientific fact.
Thank you for saying that, though, because it annoys me when people are like, yeah, if you didn't learn as a kid, you're not going to learn anything new. I'm like, hey.
That's just mean.
Yeah.
We're on this thread a little bit. I'm going to say one more thing. A lot of times why it seems that kids are learning so much and they're learning, and oh my goodness, they have calculus in 7th grade and stuff.
Right.
But that's because they are actually in the habit of learning. And what happens, I think, after college is that learning drops off. And so, in the 90s and then the 2000s, TV was, just this default comfort mechanism that we took in our information and a lot of our entertainment from. And so it would just be coming at us, and it's a lot easier to do that and just kind of become more comfortable. But when we were growing up and going to school, the whole goal is like, work hard, and, you want to be able to study so that you can have this test, and then, all those tests end. So what happens after school is actually much better, where you can continue to test yourself, or perhaps, instead of TV, now it's really YouTube. And I'm very distracted and just kind of clicking on things but noticing that it's so easy to do. I go, wait a minute, not that there's a big conspiracy, but I want to still be boss of myself. Right. Let me shut this thing down. And why is that so hard? Well, it's just the same kind of feeling when you were 5 years old and you didn't want to practice, so you still want to do these disciplines so that it's not that your brain just starts breaking down after school. It's just that you're in a habit of learning. So being in a habit of learning now, as you continue to grow in all the different ways, is very exciting and great adventures to be had, not just for the kids in school.
Yeah. And I'm not going to lie, I could continue on this topic for hours on end, but I did want to get back to talking about you for a second. I wanted to ask you, so far with everything that you've done to this point, what has been one of the biggest challenges for you, and what have you done to overcome it?
That's really good. I do reflect on myself a lot, and something that I've noticed, and this is interesting. This is where social media did something good in my life. Not always good. But I read an article in the Wall Street Journal about this coach, like Bill Belichick or something like that.
Okay.
And I just was really inspired by it. So I'm writing in my journal. I just wrote all these notes out, and I took a picture of the notes, and I sent it to the journalist, and he emailed me back because journalists don't get much attention. And but I posted it on my Facebook, which basically, if I post a picture of me and a pizza, it's like, 1,000 likes. But like notes on an article from the Wall Street Journal, it's like 20 likes.
Right.
But this one girl said, "Hey, your handwriting shows like telltale traits of tension and stress in your writing."
What? Really?
Interesting.
Yeah. And she went on, and she gave me like articles of research and stuff.
Wow.
And I said, I've been having this inkling feeling in the back of my mind, even over the past 10 years about this, that I play the violin with tension. Mm-hmm. Everything I do is with tension, but I've always been rewarded for that. Mm-hmm. It's like I muscle through my performances. But if you ever see someone who is really great at their craft as an actor, or even, let's say, Floyd Mayweather as a boxer, that they are loose. So all the intent and all the effort and the ability is at 100%, but they're not also like just strangling their performance. And people don't know that about me, but I know. I know that I'm not playing. It should be like butter. It should be really smooth. And so there's something about that. So everything that I do now, I try to do just backing off a hair.
Nice.
And trying to be a little bit more, like Bruce Lee said, like a little bit more like water.
Right.
And being more fluid. So, what has been my way of overcoming this challenge? I haven't totally overcome it, but I have improved upon it just by being aware of the problem in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. Well, speaking of things that are challenging, we actually have a new challenge for you today, because we are up to our segment, the Question of the Month. Today's episode of Entertainment Drive-Thru is brought to you by Audible.com. Audible.com is offering listeners a free audiobook of your choice and a free 30-day trial membership. Just go to audibletrial.com/edrivethru and choose from over 180,000 audio programs. Download a title free and start listening. It's just that easy. Go to audibletrial.com/edrivethru. That's audibletrial.com/edrivethru and get started today.
Already?
I really need to get like a trigger for it to just go.
You got it. That was a very strong trumpet.
Oh, well, thank you. But now this month's question is, and I actually recently changed it because the first time I asked it, it actually came out as too much of a thought-provoking and depressing question. So I changed it up a little bit. But the question is, if you were able to be the only person on this planet for just one day, what would be the first thing you would do?
If I was to be the only person on the planet for one day, what is the first thing I would do?
Yeah.
Man, how deep is that question?
Right? Well, see, I used to...
My brain just melted.
Well, see, originally I asked, if you were the last person on Earth, what would be the first thing you would do? And then I realized that's actually kind of depressing, because it's like, once you actually think about it, it's like, well, crap, I don't know what I'd do, But if it was just for one day and then the next day you could go back to society, it's like, then it's like, oh, okay, well then I don't have to, worry about, do I want to keep living?
just got back from the Philippines and I ate some of the most amazing mangoes.
Oh, yeah?
So I would go back to the Philippines and just get a bunch of perfectly ripe mangoes and just cut them open and start eating them. And this is my answer to this deep question. But then I would want to share, and I would have to find some other people. So I would be in the Philippines, and even though there are no other people, those are the parameters you gave on this question. I would be on this search for the rest of the 23 hours of trying to find people to share these amazingly perfectly ripe mangoes with.
See,
That's so cute,
I think
though.
it would be so funny though if like you went to the Philippines and you just ate so many mangoes that you just had like a food coma and you like passed out, and then when you woke up there's just like this crowd of people staring at you because like just like you're laying in like the middle of the road with like 30,000 mangoes around you, and like half of them are half eaten, and you just wake up and you're like, it's over already? I only got to do one thing.
If you look on my Facebook page and scroll down, there's a couple pictures. There's not 30,000, but I was a mango eating animal.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I wasn't able. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I just feel like that's the reaction that people have when they first try a mango. If they like it, that's definitely not the last mango that they're having that day.
Yes.
Because when I had the first mango of my life, I remember that was all I ate for like a straight week. I was just like, this is the most delicious thing I've ever had in my life. I need more of these. And now
people go to the Philippines just to get the mango.
Right.
Something that I do with my speaking and just what I do in life, I try to help people perform or live life more effectively or live life in a more alive way. And what happens is as we grow into adults, we become a little more checked out. Because if you do show your emotions too much, kind of people in society kind of point the finger at you, or they kind of like laugh at you or something like that. But if something like this ever comes along where you're eating like the most amazing mango and you're not a very expressive person, like it would be a great practice to actually just kind of get into it a little bit more and just be like, this is so good. Even if that's not really your personality, because again, everything's connected to everything else, and that will spill over into how you give a business presentation, and it's going to feel like you're throwing with your left hand. Like if you're normally throwing with your right hand, it's going to feel weird. Like I shouldn't be expressing myself this way. This is wrong. But you're going to find that people are going to be like, what's with you today? You're just a little bit extra, upbeat. And actually, upbeat is a close relative to effective living. So I would recommend that anybody that's eating something, I was just looking at also like I'm into fruit a little bit. So like
I somehow guessed
mangoes and strawberries are actually in season right now, but just try one of them and just kind of exaggerate this expression of and as childlike and sort of cheesy as that is, it does make life a little more alive. And then for those of you listening, I also think just traveling in and of itself is a huge expansion of your life, a huge expansion of your brain. And you got to go find where the best mangoes are.
Yes.
That would be what? I think it's South America, the Philippines, and Hawaii or something like that.
Also, what are their mangoes? What may be mango for you? Like something amazing, like mouth-altering thing might be something else for somebody else.
It is mouth-altering.
Find your mango.
Well, and actually to take this in that, sort of like philosophical, metaphorical type of way to make this really good advice, because you could really use this for anything in life. I mean, it's kind of like that age-old question of what do I want to do with my life? And we kind of briefly talked about that in the beginning with you not knowing exactly where you wanted to go. And I think that's true with all of us. And it's like, once you finally get that perfect mango, you want to follow it to the ends of the earth. You want to get the next one. You want to get another one. And then you want to get a third one. And then you want to get a fourth one. And, actually the way I wanted to take this is actually, the way that I found my life headed. Because, when I first moved to LA, I got there with the intentions of wanting to be a rock star, and I wanted to do all this. I think at the time I wanted to do this really obscure style of music that in reality no one would have listened to, but I would have listened to. And it wouldn't have made me a lot of money because of that, but I really wanted to do it. And then, within the first month, I met Anna. And since then, I started, really getting into Iceland and, the culture of Iceland and the people of Iceland. And, I've started meeting more people. And it's amazing how just connecting with people from Iceland has really changed my life. And I've actually thought about, for a while, about writing a book called How Iceland Changed My Life. But it's like, since I've met Anna, we started this show, and it's not a show that I originally ever thought I would ever do. But because of it, it's inspired me to do so many other things. And, now I want to go farther. I've had all these thoughts of, well, we do this show, but, how would it be on video? Or, how would it be if we did this with it? Or how would it be if we did this with it? And it's like that constant idea of trying to find that perfect mango, the next one and the next one. And I'm
with you, man.
I wanted to say that because I just thought of that and I was like, that's a really cool concept.
And it's not even, it's like, it is real stuff. And you're ahead of me with this podcast business. This is great. You guys actually had nothing and then you put it into something in reality. You created something. And hopefully, my hope, at least when I was thinking about our talk that we were going to have here, was that this would help people, whoever was listening. And so you have developed that, and hopefully that will actually happen because of what you guys created.
And it's amazing what you create as well with your presentations and everything, the keynote speaker and all that stuff. That's amazing. And it gets people amped up and ready for their life,
Yeah, with the speaking events, I do play the violin in the beginning, middle, and end. And that is my thing, where I basically travel with my violin and my computer.
That's awesome.
And so that's my solo thing. But I love performing in the context of a band, and my main band is Trans-Siberian Orchestra.
Right.
And I can't say enough about the organization and my bandmates. I mean, this is a group of integrity from top to bottom, not perfect, but certainly always wanting to push the boundaries, going for that huge, amazing manga. But yeah, the Trans-Siberian Orchestra is a band that I'm so proud to be a part of. And so we're going to actually be performing at a big rock festival at the end of July. It's called Wacken or Wacken. I don't know how exactly to pronounce it, but 100,000 people, and it was sold out last year.
Wow.
So we're going to be rehearsing for that. But a lot of what goes into that is just, I love my bandmates, and our times being social are so fun, doing music together and then hanging out. And when Trans-Siberian Orchestra does something, they don't do it 100%. They do it 110%. So we're just together all the time. And personally, I really love both. I love doing the solo things, and I love doing things in the context of a band or the context of a team.
Well, and I have to say, you made me think of this, and I have to say it just because I think it's hilarious. But when you talked about finding like the biggest, ripest, perfect mango, it reminded me of Scrat from Ice Age, just constantly going for that one acorn, and then he finally gets to it, and it's like he's like, yes, and then it causes the Ice Age.
Yes, but mangoes are way better than acorns.
Right.
So what are we gonna cause? Implosion of the universe?
Right.
Something really, really good for sure. How did you get involved though with the Trans-Siberian Orchestra? Like, because we were in Chicago, and then you went to travel with the band, and how did you get to LA, and how did you get to the Trans-Siberian Orchestra?
Yes, while I was in Chicago was when all the the great things happened with Shania Twain and Celine Dion, but we'll get back to that later, maybe. But I also moved to Los Angeles. Well, I actually did a fair amount of acting in Chicago.
Nice.
And so after the second world tour of Shania, I kind of thought, I've done a lot with these big tours. I really want to become a great actor. Now, I had also gotten some training in Chicago, but I was like, I'm going to go to California, get some real training, and audition at those big studios as an actor.
Nice.
So I joined up with the Joanne Barron, D.W. Brown School of Dramatic Arts.
Right.
And Joanne Barron and D.W. Brown is what brought me to you guys, because I heard the interviews you guys did with them.
Right.
I was massively inspired, as always, from those guys. And really, D.W. was my main teacher for 2 years. So I stopped touring for 2 years.
Wow.
And that was also under the encouragement of Joanne. And I remember her quote to me was, sometimes you need to stop doing what you're good at so that you can be great.
Nice.
And I mean, yeah, so I was like, I don't know, but I'm going to give it a try. My time at that school, and I actually still go there every week just to audit classes and to sit in and just to be under DW's inspiration for 45 minutes here and there. That changed my life. So as far as even what I teach in my speaking events, a lot of that came from my training at the Barron Brown School of Dramatic Arts. Mm-hmm. So we were given like 1,000 essential points of what makes a live performance or a performance at all effective. What gives it that lift? What would cause a standing ovation or make people notice? And so, but I never got any of that training in Chicago. Nothing against Chicago. I love Chicago. Chicago is awesome. But as far as the performing arts in Los Angeles, there is like a war mentality. I remember DW said, I want to make you so good that you actually take the job from the son of the producer of the movie. You kind of had the inside lane to get into the movie, but you're just so darn good that they can't deny you.
Right.
And
Yes.
I would go into these auditions in the beginning, and I'd be like with my I wasn't doing it right in the beginning, but I'd have like my paper in hand, and I would be like, hi, just right from, and I didn't know that in the first second, just by hesitating like that, they knew I wasn't the right guy.
Oh yeah.
But, and that's sad, but that's fine.
But that's how it happens.
That's how it happens. It allowed me to grow. They want
confidence.
Not just confidence, but also competence. So one of the greatest things about competence is that DW always said, you got to have those lines memorized.
Oh yeah.
If it's 5 pages you just got the night before, so what?
Right.
Do whatever it takes to memorize that whole thing. And that's right there was, at least, I mean, I think it might be different now, but that was the difference between Chicago and LA acting right there. I would go into auditions holding the script every time in Chicago. And in Los Angeles, at least how DW taught me, said you got to get rid of those lines so that you can connect with the reader or the camera. You can do that. And so you're not looking down. Every time you look down, you really have that huge disconnect. And that's how I do my speaking also. I don't have the podium. I don't have notes because I already have it locked and loaded in my brain. But using all of this and going back to Trans-Siberian Orchestra is that I still used my music, my violin playing to meet different people. And I met this cello player, and she asked if I wanted to be in the string section of the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Wow. This violinist had not been able to do it. And so last minute, I said, sure. I didn't know what it was. So there's actually a local string section of 7 players, violinists, violists, and cello players that we hire locally wherever we go as the Trans-Siberian Orchestra to help fill out the look and fill out the sound of what we're doing. So I went down to San Diego, and I was new to this group, and I'm going to have a little bit of a tell-all here. This is some of the. Should I censor myself?
No.
Okay. See, exactly.
Look,
what does a real artist do?
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. If you want to fucking say something, just fucking say it.
Well, thank you for that. But that's not really it. But more like, should I be politically correct? No.
No, I
know. So here's what it is that this group knew each other, and they was really interesting. I remember just the vibe was not right.
Okay.
I always, and you guys know me, I have this vibe that I'm a nice guy, helpful, I'm your friend. But sometimes people sense that and they go, I'm going to just mess with that guy. They just love to kind of a little bit of the bully thing. I don't know what's going on there, but I also really don't like that vibe. But I remember one of the violinists, the first thing she said to me was, I just got off tour with Kanye West. What have you done? I thought that was the weirdest thing, just social dissonance, but she was so strong, and I wasn't going to start listing out my resume, which is very good.
You should have been I just came off tour with Celine Dion. What up?
No, you should have been well, you know what? That's really impressive. But what kind of mango was the last one you had? Because I'm telling you, mine was perfect.
That's right. Her brain would have melted right there.
Yeah.
I know, right?
I would have won the battle right there. Yes. No, I guess I say that, and I don't even know if she meant it the way I took it. I want to have that openness there, but the other folks just weren't really that kind to me either. Aww. And so I just was I kind of learned this from DW. I just caught the vibe and did the next moment, which was I picked up my food. Because we were going to eat, and I ended up walking to a different table, and to just kind of be by myself, which is fine, But this long-haired dude was walking towards that table also to kind of, I think, get away a little bit himself too. And we both sat at the same table, and his name was Al Petrelli, and he said to me, "Hey, I heard that you worked with Shania Twain. Did you ever meet Mutt Lange?" I'm not sure if you know, Mutt Lange is this amazing producer who produced all of Def Leppard's hits.
Wow.
Bryan Adams, Michael Bolton, Britney Spears, Backstreet Boys. I mean, really just Lady Gaga. The guy is truly an amazing producer. Right. And I said, yeah, he ran the auditions, and he actually ran front of house, and I do know Mutt. And so we started talking about rock and roll, and he also did all the Foreigner hits and AC/DC's Back in Black. So I was able to talk to Al at this rock and roll level, but I actually didn't totally know who he was. He's the music director of Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Right, yeah. So, we had this nice dinner. I did my job I as best I could. But so I did one uncomfortable thing, which was I left the group, which is very kind of socially difficult to do, but I was like, this vibe is a little bit not my style. I'm up, I'm out. Right. I went to a different table.
Right.
That was the first uncomfortable thing. The second uncomfortable thing was I asked if Al would like to trade business cards. So that's a little bit of a quote that I created, because I used to say, would you like my business card? And that seemed very try hard to me, like I'm lower than that person. Or even if I said, could I have your business card? Again, try hard, where I'm lower than that person. So just at least using words to kind of even it out a little bit, I say, would you like to trade business cards? Nice. And that actually works. I traded business cards with Howard Schultz, CEO and chairman of Starbucks, and
nice.
Really big players. They get it. If you've actually thought about that, they kind of understand that you're trying to hustle, basically. Oh yeah. And Al and I exchanged business cards. So that's the second uncomfortable thing I did. The third uncomfortable thing I did was I sent him a holiday card, and I said, hey, thanks for the dinner and for the advice. It was great performing with you. And then the fourth uncomfortable thing I did was I called the phone number on the card I got no response from Al, but I called it and his son answered, and he was like really out of it. It was hilarious. He's a very typical teenager, like out of it. And I'm like, hi, yeah, I had sent a holiday card to your dad, and I was just following up and just checking if he got it. I mean, not perfect words, but again, like that fourth uncomfortable thing of making that call. With doing those 4 uncomfortable things, something happened because he brought my name up in their brainstorming session, and they said, how can we make this show bigger and better for the next year? And it was Al's idea to have 2 violinists running around, and so they had me audition. And
Nice.
This is where DW's teachings came in. So I already explained kind of how I did auditions hesitantly, not really prepared all the way. And sometimes when we're not prepared all the way, that's really just a outgrowth of our low self-esteem, so that when we don't get the job, we can later say, I wasn't really prepared.
Right.
That's why I didn't get it. Because if I was truly 100% prepared and then I didn't get it, then what would that say about me?
Right.
But but what DW would teach, at least with the acting craft, is, a lot of times actors, and I myself did this, you would try to be mysterious and try to be deep. So you would have you would be this enthusiastic person, but you were also abused as a child, so that you were also masking it with a very stoic look, but you were also drunk. So you're doing 18 different things, and that comes off in an audition as just confusing.
Right.
You're not deep and mysterious and artistic. You're just confusing. You haven't solved the problem that these people that are running the audition are looking for people to hire. So you're gone, So what DW said is take one note and play that thing 100% to the hilt. Mm-hmm. So because I did that with auditions. Like I said, I'd bring a plate of cookies in. I'd make sure I was wearing my lucky shirt.
Nice.
I was trying to make my hair right. I would do so many things that were outside of the actual doing the audition. And so DW's like, forget the cookies and all that kind of stuff. Show up, be professional, be prepared. One other thing that he had said was sometimes you're going to, this is not what he said. This is what an actor would think on his own. Mm-hmm. I'm going to start out kind of low key and then kind of gradually build upon it. So by the end, it's going to be this epic explosion. Right. I'm going to pull them away, And DW would say, have the epic explosion starting before you walk in the door.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So you start in not at level 1, and then you build a 2 and 3 and 4 to 5. Start off at level 5. For a moment, 1 year at level 5, all the way to the end, and just continually blast these people with your vibe. So those 2 principles I used for the Trans-Siberian Orchestra audition. 1, I was going to be the most enthusiastic violinist that they had seen.
Nice.
Right.
On the other hand, I was going to start off with that fully, and I was fully prepared. And when we started, I was on. Because if you start off at level 1 and you're kind of low key and trying to show that you can have this range, they might cut you off before you even get to level 2 because they go, he doesn't got the goods.
Right.
So when I did 2 songs, it was like a rock version of Flight of the Bumblebee, which they call A Last Illusion. And then I also did Mozart's Figaro. I was there in Tampa, Florida, in their studio, and the producer, the main boss of Trans-Siberian Orchestra, is Paul O'Neill, and he happened to be in that studio, so he did my audition.
Nice.
When I did my audition in this new way of just start off at 100% and play one vibe and just do that one thing and instead of trying to do a bunch of different confusing things, he just stood up. And he's an interesting guy. He wears the same clothes every day, and one of the articles of clothing is this leather $4,000 motorcycle jacket.
Nice.
And he rarely takes this jacket off, but he took it off and he starts swirling it around in the air and he spikes it on the ground. And he's like, his hair's all in his face. He's got really long hair and he's like hunched over and he just looks at me and he's just like, if you don't join the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, I'm going to effing kill myself.
Wow.
And I had never gotten that passionate of a response from one of my auditions.
Wow.
And it was such an amazing moment in my life that this man would care that much and be that passionate enough. And I was like, this guy gets me.
Right.
He understands me as an artist and what I'm trying to do. And I had gone through so many auditions in acting and music where I just would get thank you'd.
Right.
Have you heard about that? Where you just kind of do the whole thing and they say thank you.
Exactly.
And actually, back in the day, I used to actually go, well, I did pretty good. They said thank you. and really, that means you did not solve our problem. We have a problem. We need to hire workers. Are you the one that's going to be able to help us?
Yeah.
It's the nice way of saying no, really. Thank you.
So when this man said yes so powerfully that just really just shook the universe for me, I was like, whatever about money and all this kind of stuff, I'm in. If this guy cares this much. I mean, in the back of my mind, I just was going, this guy's crazy. And I like this guy's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And the other people in the room in the audition, they were kind of smiling and laughing because they knew that he could get this way, that this on fire in his passion and in really his support of me. Right. And so that's, I don't know if that story is even really out there on how I joined Trans-Siberian Orchestra, but that was the start. And this is going to be my 9th year with the organization. And as long as they'll have me, I'll be there.
Congratulations.
So,
yeah. Thank you.
Well, unfortunately, we are getting down to the end of our interview, but I am serious. We're going to have you back on the show at some point because I've got so many more questions I want to ask you.
Can we just have Roddy Chong like number 1, number 2, number 3?
Yeah, we'll be serious. We'll have a whole month of Roddy Chong, and it'll just be Roddy Chong Monday. Yeah. And then like every episode will just be the next day. But before we go, where are places that our listeners can find out more information about you?
The best thing is to check out my website, roddychong.com, RODDYCHONG.com. And that's where you can have me come out to speak at your event. Mm-hmm. I'm not an everyday person on my social media, but that same spelling of the name for Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. But I do read everything. And so keep it positive. People that are haters, it does hurt my feelings.
Thank you.
But those people that encourage me, and even that girl. Darn, I wish I could remember her name right now. That mentioned about the tension in my writing. I'm like, man, that is right on the money. So, that's where people can reach me, and you can see on my events section of my website where I'll be speaking or performing.
Excellent.
And you put a picture of you eating the mangoes. I believe. I think I saw it on your either Twitter or Facebook. I can't remember.
Go for the best mangoes.
Yeah, so you can see a picture of him like eating the mango. So if
we need to make a meme of just Roddy holding a mango, and then it just says "Go for the best melon in life" or mango in life.
Go for the best. We're gonna expand that into something even more brilliant, but it's going to be something like that.
It's going to be inspirational, I'm telling you.
But thank you so much, Roddy, for being on the show. It's really been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan and Anna, so much, and thanks everybody for listening.
Absolutely. And for more information on Roddy Chong and the podcast, go to entertainmentdrivethru.com and subscribe on iTunes. Like and follow us on our Facebook at facebook.com/entertainmentdrivethru and our Twitter and Instagram at eDriveThru.
This is Roddy Chong, and you've been listening to Entertainment Drive-Thru.